Hello, I am Susan with Even Star Institute, and we are here with Shalina Nicole from
Hi.
Fiery Maple Holistic Healing. Shalina is teaching a class in January called A Deity for All Seasons. And Shalina is here to talk about who she is as a teacher, as a person, how she came to herbal healing and teas. And hello, Shalina, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you? Thanks for
I'm
having me.
so glad you're here. So glad you're going to be teaching the class. Tell us a little bit about how you came to holistic healing and herbal remedies.
Okay, well, I will try to make a very long story short. Basically, it runs in the family. So I grew up in a family where we always had herbal books laying around. My grandma used herbal medicine. She taught us how to use it. She would say little things like, "Oh, if your face is breaking out, use oatmeal for it." Or we used chamomile for stomach aches and things like that. So I was just surrounded by it. I lived in Chicago for several years. I loved living in the city. But then a couple years ago, I moved back to Michigan because I really felt like a need to be much more surrounded by nature. I started calling Chicago city jail because I didn't have a car there and I walked everywhere and I was very much a city girl. But I miss being outside, I miss the trees. And so when I moved back to Michigan, I spent that entire summer just like in the woods, foraging, for wild mushrooms and wild grapes and wild food and wild medicine. And then I started taking courses. So I took one with an herbalist here, renowned in Ann Arbor, and I really enjoyed it. And I just felt like it was my avocation. But then I had the opportunity to study overseas, to do like a 7-month correspondence course with 2 months on location in Scotland. And it was just one of those things where I had to do it. I didn't know what I was going to do about my career because my background is marketing and communications, which I love. I love that. I was really happy in my career, but I was just felt like I needed something more than just that. I
And
needed a hobby that was much more just a hobby, but like a passion. And so
so it
I
sounds like you grew up just having herbs surrounding you. Was that not just normal? Like
yeah.
how did you come to decide that this was what you wanted to do and leave marketing?
Well, I think that it wasn't like a black and white decision. It was like all these little baby steps. So since I was feeling burnt out at work, I started spending a lot more time in my garden and meditating. And I remember taking a day off of work and just in the garden the entire time. And for some reason, during one of my meditations, I had the thought, which I say it was the plants telling me. They said, "Go study herbal medicine in Scotland." And I remember thinking, "What?" And I'm a procrastinator. I have to admit, I procrastinate. I have all these ideals. I'm always procrastinating. One of the first times in my life, I immediately went inside and I Googled Scotland Herbal Medicine Apprenticeship, and it just popped up. It was one of the first things that popped up was this 7-month program. And like I said, I'm someone always like searching, and usually you come across something, a fellowship, a grant opportunity, and it's always like you've missed the deadline, and it's next year or 9 months later or something like that. And then by the time it comes around again, I've forgotten about it. But this time, the deadline to apply was like in a couple weeks, and it started the next year, and I filled it out right then.
Wow.
I
And
never do that. I filled it
so
out right then.
So that must have been maybe a little scary for you taking that risk. Uh, but so have you become an advocate for just kind of taking in the messages that surround you and listening carefully to what's coming at you and being willing to step outside of a normal pattern? I mean, it sounds like what you did, and here you are.
Yes. I think it's so important because those like taking the risks, the leaps are really what leads to like very unique, interesting lives, and usually like changes that are good. Um, yeah, I just really feel like and I include myself in this. we see very limited worldviews on television and just out there in society, what's possible, what kind of careers are possible. And so I feel like we usually gravitate towards things that are, normal and sane and common. Whereas if you want an uncommon life, you have to do uncommon things, like quit your job and run away to another country.
Well, isn't it interesting though? The irony is that you grew up with herbs as normal and
Mhm.
more or less mundane, like this is just what we do. And yet
Right.
that ended up being what your risk step was.
I love that you mentioned that, because I think that that's like another lesson that sometimes we don't get, whereas you don't appreciate kind of the things that are natural to yourself or your family that actually other people would very much appreciate. And that's kind of a special gift or skill, but it's just, common to you and your family. So you don't recognize it as such.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it takes that recognition of, oh, this is what I love. This is a gift. And maybe there's a reason I do this so naturally because I'm here to share it with people.
Right. Right.
Well, good. So tell us just a little bit more about anything that you'd like to mention about your how you learned about herbs, what you like to convey in the class, your personal philosophy, anything extra that you'd like to add um, about who you are and how you approach herbal healing in the class.
Oh, okay. So many good questions. So I will say that one thing I really like about herbs is I feel like it is everybody's heritage. And what I mean by that is, like, this is the medicine that was put here, whether you believe, in a higher power or not. It's the medicine that came with the territory of Earth that is most conducive for humans to thrive. And so I kind of feel like it's almost innate in us, and that when people start learning herbs, they'll be surprised at how much they just kind of know intuitively, or how much is just like old knowledge stored in their DNA. And I think the other thing that I'm so passionate about is listen, I'm a Michigander. We are very independent. We like being self-sufficient, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Although you always have to remember about, we're a community and a collective. But I very much value doctors and experts, and I want to listen to them. But I also think we have to remember that there's so much that we can do for ourselves, and herbs are one of those things where, like, they're made for that. Children can use them, elderly can use them, older people can use them. You don't need to have like a specialized degree. You don't need to have a lot of money. It's the medicine, like, of the people.
Hmm.
I could talk about this all day. You'll have to cut me off.
That's great. No. Well, I appreciate your passion. I appreciate your enthusiasm. I'm going to just show folks here about your class. So here we are. In order to look at Shalina's class, go to evidstarchalice.com/institute and go to the courses page. And this is Shalina's class, A Deity for Every Season. It is on Wednesdays beginning on January 6th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. And you can just register by clicking there. And we will be talking to Shalina again to hear more about the class specifically. So join us on that video when we talk to Shalina about the class. And Shalina, thank you so much for sharing your background and your passion and your enthusiasm and that beautiful smile. And we will talk
Aw.
again very soon.
Thank you, Susan.
You bet.